Hello grade 6, Miss Vijaya here. In this video, we are going to see how you can prepare for a Criterion D summative applying mathematics in real life. If we look at the criteria descriptor for grade 6, you have a couple of strands here. And don't worry so much about it because in the summative, you will be given a template. And the template looks like this. This is where you state your problem and your initial guess or estimate. And then for every cell, every box, for instance here, identify the relevant elements. Basically, it is the strand which is in the descriptor. Identify the relevant elements. And in the second box, select adequate mathematical strategies. That's actually the second strand. So if you use the template, then you should not miss anything. The only thing you have to know, of course, is how and what to write in those particular boxes. So usually when you are given a task or an assignment or a problem, this is where you state it. And then you will write down here your initial estimate. So for instance, what is too low for an answer or what is too high. And later on, at the end, after calculation, you can check whether your answer actually falls within the minimum and the maximum, the too low and too high estimation in the beginning. So what should you do in the box identify relevant elements? We are going to look at this example problem here. So let's say Mr. Kurbis here in the photo, he likes popping bubble wrap. But anyway, this is the problem. Mr. Kurbis has a sheet of bubble wrap which is approximately the size of an MIS study book. And when he turned on his stopwatch, he could actually pop all the bubbles in this sheet for approximately 3 minutes and a few seconds. So he tried that a couple of times, and trial 1, he spent 3 minutes and 6 seconds, trial 2, 3 minutes and 15 seconds, and so on and so on. He tried for 5 times. So now, you are asked, how long will it take him if he is given for his birthday a bubble wrap roll of 40 centimeter by 5 meter? It costs 6.5 euros, 6 euros and 50 cents. Somebody bought for him as a present. So can you estimate, can you calculate how long it will take him to pop all the bubbles in this bubble wrap roll? So you can pause this video for a while and think, how will you solve this problem mathematically? So have you thought of an idea? There are maybe a few different ways in solving it. However, one way could be by imagining if I open the roll of bubble wrap, and this is the size, the dimension of it. The width is 40 centimeter and the length is 5 meters, which is 500 centimeter. And if this is the size of an MIS study book, of course, all diagram here is not to scale. It's not exactly how it looks like, but just as an idea. So I could try to think, how many study books can I actually fit in this roll of bubble wrap? So if this is the size of one study book, maybe I can try and see how many times I can fit a study book. So, and so on and so on. So mathematically, you might want to think about the area of the study book. So how many times I can fit it here in the area of the bubble wrap roll. So the first thing you have to do, of course, you have to take your study book and measure the width and the length of your own study book. And then we can try and see how many times we can fit it here. So this is, of course, a problem of division. How many times can I fit my study book into this roll? You might want to think about arranging it like this, or you may want to find the area of one study book, and then we can divide the area of the bigger roll by the area of the study book, and then we can check how many study books we can fit here. So why is it useful to do so? Remember that we know how much time Mr. Kurbis can pop the bubbles in this size of bubble wrap. So if it is approximately 3 minutes and every single region here he spent 3 minutes, and so if we know how many times of this region there are in the whole bubble wrap roll, then we can multiply it by 3 minutes and something, right? And then we know how much time he needs to pop all the bubble wraps, all the bubbles in this roll. So if that's your idea, then of course there are a couple of measurements that you need to solve it. And this is the part where you write down all the measurements that you might need. So for instance, in this case, you may want to say, okay, the average of how many minutes it takes Mr. Kurbis to pop bubbles in one MIS study book size kind of sheet. And you might want to measure the size of MIS study book. So this is where you can write that down. Another thing that you may need is the dimension of this bubble wrap. So that's what you can write down. It's 40 centimeter by 5 meter. There is always other information that you do not need, which is not relevant to your problem. So for instance, how much the bubble wrap is not really relevant to your problem, so you do not need to write it down. So once you have an idea of how to solve it, this is the place where you write down basic assumptions and describe your mathematics process. You do not need to show the calculation yet. You only need to write a couple of sentences of ideas. This is how I'm going to solve it. Assumptions means something that you take as true, which is important for solving the information. So for instance, in this case, we are assuming that Mr. Kurbis will be able to spend 3 minutes and a few seconds to pop all the bubbles in MIS study book size of sheet. And of course, this may not be true, but this is your assumption that he will be able to do it constantly every time. So afterwards, in this box, apply the selected mathematical strategies. This is where you do your real calculation, whether you multiply, divide, add, subtract, or whatever. This is the place where you do it, and you will get a final answer in this box as well. The next two important things in Criterion D is to make some comments on the degree of accuracy of your solution. And the second one is comments on whether the solution makes sense in the real life situation, what could influence your results. So what is the difference between degree of accuracy and real life comments? So for the degree of accuracy comments, you have to think about all the measurements that you have done or dimensions of things that you are given. And you have to think of sources of error. Where could there be any error in the measurement? Meanwhile, for comments on real life situation, you have to think whether your answer is reasonable, consider things that might influence that, and so on. So in terms of the example problem that we have with Mr. Kurbis, then these are the kind of things that you could write down when you are selecting adequate mathematical strategies. This is the assumption that you have made, that he can actually pop the bubbles with constant rate, constant speed every time. We need to find the area of the study book and the area of the bubble wrap. And then we can divide those two areas. And then afterwards, you multiply the average time by how many study books can fit into the wrap roll. Of course, you have to choose a sensible unit for that. You can use seconds or minutes and conversion should be correct as well. What kind of comments can we make about the degree of accuracy of the measurements in this problem? You can pause this video for a while and try to list all the things that you think might be the source of error in the measurement. And then we can have a look to the answers. So some comments that you can make here is whether we know the accuracy of the time taken. Maybe it was using a stopwatch, but we don't know whether the person measuring it is actually clicking the stopwatch on at the same time as when Mr. Kurbis is starting to pop all the bubbles. So those kind of things can influence the answer or the accuracy of the measurement. So it was probably a bit hard to be exact when measuring the study book, for instance. It might be 20.3 centimeters. Some other people might say it's nearer to 20.4. So that's also accuracy of the measurement that you may want to take into account. The dimensions of the bubble wrap roll is just given by the company, but we did not measure it ourselves, so we don't actually know whether it was really accurate. Of course, you should not write only like this. You should put in a bit more detail and give examples on how it could affect your result. Remember the backpack and elephant problem, how many backpacks are needed so that you have a balance between the backpacks and the elephant, which weighs 5,000 kilograms. So at the time, we made an assumption that each backpack was 6 kilograms because we measured somebody's backpack and it was 6 kilograms. That's our assumption. And from the calculation, we get if the backpack is 6 kilograms, we need 833 backpacks. So when we make a comment on the degree of accuracy, we should mention how it will affect the answers. So for instance, if we say the elephant may not be exactly 5,000 kilograms, it could be more, it could be less, then we have to write a sentence of its effect. So if it were heavier, we need more backpacks, obviously. So this is how you can see the connection. If this would have been more than 5,000 kilograms, obviously we will need more than 833 backpacks. Another comment that we made at the time, if the backpack was not exactly 6 kilograms, let's say it was actually only 5.8, then we show that, wow, with such a small difference, we actually influence the answer quite greatly, because when it was 6 kilograms, we need 833 backpacks. However, when it was 5.8 kilograms, we need 862 backpacks. So giving an example like this is also very good to show the effect of accuracy for your answer. Last, if we go back to Mr. Kurbis' problem with popping the bubble wrap, what kind of real-life comments can we make? We could say that Mr. Kurbis couldn't possibly be having the same speed all the time. He would need to slow down and take breaks maybe. This would mean that your answer should be actually more or longer than what you have calculated. Or he might get better and begin to speed up, who knows? Then it means the real answer will be less than what you have calculated. Another comment could be that the bubbles on the roll might be a different size from the bubbles he practiced with. That will actually influence how long he's going to finish everything. So hopefully you see what is expected in Criterion D summative. Your teachers probably have uploaded a couple of samples or model solutions in Themes class notebook, so you can always go and read those samples. You can practice with a couple of problems from the packet and maybe during the Themes meetings as well. So good luck with preparing for summative Criterion D. Have fun, grade 6!